Anyway, I am Cam Stewart. It is Tuesday in most parts of the world, including right here. More importantly, it is franchise tag deadline day on this Tuesday, March 4th. And that, of course, brings some massive news for the Patriots. The biggest franchise tag around the NFL this year is in Cincinnati. They have announced for the second year in a row they will franchise tag Tee Higgins, who is going to be the top wide receiver on the market and almost certainly the top target for the Patriots in free agency. Maybe Ronnie Stanley has something to say about that, but certainly right at the top would have been Tee Higgins. Now, that's not an option. No trade's going to happen. All right, he is playing for Cincinnati this year, no matter how disappointed he is in that fact. He don't want to play for Cincinnati. And maybe the Patriots can start the long game on him for next year. But as we've seen, this is not a terribly sexy free agent destination anymore. Foxborough without Tom Brady, without Bill Belichick, not quite the same, even though we all love Drake May and certainly us in the Patriots fandom like Mike Vrabel and having him on board. But that is going to take some serious convincing, and that convincing is going to be in the way of a lot of money. But here's the thing. Patriots need receiving help right now. Like, now. Okay? And maybe you argue it's not the biggest need that they have, and I would absolutely hear that out. They need tackles, too. They need people to keep Drake May, alive back there, which they don't necessarily have on this team right now. But the next thing I think we all look at is wide receiver. And it's funny, these reports came out last week from Chad Graff of The Athletic saying, no, the Patriots actually aren't looking at receiver. They're not going to be aggressive there. They're going to be looking in the trenches, offensive line, defensive line. And what did I say on this program when that happened? I said, that means they're not getting Tee Higgins is exactly what that means. Because if they had a shot at Tee Higgins, they would not be telling you that they're not going to be aggressive at the wide receiver position. Just not going to happen. But they don't have a shot at Tee Higgins. He's franchise tagged for the second year in a row. And then suddenly they're not aggressive. Well, the report coming out yesterday from multiple outlets is that the Patriots are going to be aggressive when it comes to wide receivers in the free agent market. So that should give you good reason to believe that they're really going to be in on Chris Godwin of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He did not get franchise tagged, which some thought he might. He's coming off a year that was cut short. He was injured in week 7. And obviously the team that would know most about that injury of any team in the league would be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the team that did not franchise tag him. Now Godwin is about to walk into a situation where he is the top receiver in the free agent market. Not our pal, Tee Higgins. Godwin just turned 29. He did get a pretty serious injury towards the end of last year. It was not towards the end. It was in the middle. I think he played 7 games. Yeah. And he was on pace for a career year, actually. He'd caught 50 balls in 7 games, 576 yards. And a career year would be something because this guy's gotten over 1,000 yards receiving 4 times. And guess what? Half of them were without Tom Brady as his quarterback. One of them was with Jameis Winston as his quarterback. Let's take that into account. And the year that they won the Super Bowl with Brady was a pedestrian year for him. Only 840 yards, which would have him be the Patriots' leading receiver by about 200 yards this year. And 7 touchdowns. The guy can play outside, inside, in the slot, obviously. He can win on short routes, intermediate routes, deep balls. He was a deep ball target for Brady as well. He's a guy who would absolutely fit this Josh McDaniels offense like a glove, you would think. But you have to take into account that he had a pretty significant injury last year. And how does that slow a guy down who is still in his prime, but notching towards 30, 1 year before he turns 30 here? I think that's what the Patriots really have to question. But then again, as I've said on this program so many times before, how many questions can they ask? And by that, I mean, this is a really desperate team. They have nothing at receiver. Like, their outside threat last year was Kayshon Boutte. Like, how many questions can you ask? And it stinks that this ankle injury is so bad that the Bucks are not franchise tagging him. I mean, it's good the Patriots have a shot at him, but that's not a good sign. I mean, that this ankle injury that kept him out, what was it, dislocated ankle? It sounds horrifying. Was out for half the year. And now the team that has seen the 4 1,000-yard seasons, that is not blowing it up. They're not rebuilding. They're a playoff team, is saying, we'll let him go to market. I understand why there'd be pause for concern there. But also, what do you got? What do you have, man? Like, the alternative is basically nothing. You know, there's a guy or two they can trade for, which I do want to talk about later on in the show. But in terms of free agency, right, it's going to be Godwin at the top. Stephon Diggs will be near the top. And the other guy would be Amari Cooper. And honestly, y'all, I'm okay with Amari Cooper. He's on the wrong side of 30, but the guy's still productive. Like, you think they lose their legs and they lose him fast. Maybe he'll lose his legs between now and August, September, but I doubt it. This is a guy who is still productive for a competitive team last year. Gets obviously traded to Buffalo out of Cleveland at the deadline or around the deadline. And amongst two teams, he's still over 500 yards receiving, which isn't a huge number. And with his career, it's actually one of the lowest. But the guy's, 32 now? All right, in that 30, it's going to be 31. 31 this year. 6 1,000-yard seasons, including his career high in receiving yards, which was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, 2023, with the Browns, catching passes from Joe Flacco. He's another guy who's in that mold of Godwin in terms of he's not necessarily a burner. He doesn't get a ton of separation, but they're excellent route runners. That's what this Josh McDaniels offense needs, and that's all Drake May needs. I don't know if you watch Drake May. He can sling it. He can shoot it right in there. He doesn't need a guy with 5 yards of separation. It would be nice because he didn't deal with it all this past year, and I think the Patriots do need that at some point. But here's a guy in Amari Cooper who just gets open enough and runs routes to a T. And that's maybe why he's cheated the system a little bit at age 30, is that, he just does all the fundamental things right. DK Metcalf, who we will talk about later in the show, does not do that. And there's been problems with all kinds of guys. Deebo Samuel certainly doesn't do that. And I got people now saying, why don't they just trade for one of these guys? I mean, Deebo went for a 5th-round pick. San Francisco was so ready to get rid of Deebo, man. And Deebo was ready to get out. Like, there was not... And with San Francisco, you always have to ask, is he a product of that system? Because I've seen analysts before talking about that there's no true number one in San Francisco because of how they scheme and how they space it out. And you got to, these guys are tough to cover, but they're not number ones. And that's why Deebo, as a kind of a bit player at this point, goes for a 5th-round pick. That doesn't happen. But back to these guys, the Godwins and the Coopers. And potentially Cooper Kupp, who we haven't talked about recently, but is still an option for the Patriots. These guys are all old. They're 30, 29, old at the receiver position, but they're elite route runners. They get open enough, and they always produce. Always. I mean, again, Godwin was about to have a career year last year. Now it gets cut short. You can't change that. But each of the 3 seasons before the injury, he was a 1,000-yard receiver. In 4 of the last 5 going into last year, he was a 1,000-yard receiver. And again, the only one he wasn't was when he was a key piece for a team that won the Super Bowl. I'll take that. Would Tee Higgins have been at the top still? Sure. And they would have overpaid for him. They probably would have gone to $30 million or above for him, which in 2 years, I guess that looks great. But right now, it looks like a way overpay. And if Tee Higgins is off the table, which he is, and the free agency aggregate is then Chris Godwin and Amari Cooper, you can do a lot worse than that. But you're bringing in Cooper Kupp again. Cooper Kupp needs to be in this conversation. I think I've said it before. I think he would be a great fit for the Patriots for the same reason that Chris Godwin would. I mean, Cooper Kupp is more into the slot, but like Godwin, his route tree is very diverse, man. I mean, he can be your short yardage guy, your third and short, intermediate, and he can get deep balls. I mean, he scored a 69-yard touchdown against the Patriots this year. He's also a deep ball threat. So I love having those guys who have been around the block. In the case of Godwin and Kupp, they've both won Super Bowls. You come in and you help out a young quarterback in a Tom Brady style offense. To me, that's a no-brainer. That's win-win-win. Would I have rather had Tee Higgins? Probably, just because of the age and the productivity. But with all those other things factored in, and you tell me it's going to be Chris Godwin and Cooper Kupp instead, sign me the hell up. Like, I'm still in on that. The Patriots, this is a tough blow. If there is such a thing, it's been a while since I've had a tough blow. It is a tough blow that the Patriots don't have this opportunity at Tee Higgins and that he gets franchise tagged for the second year in a row. But this is not the end of the free agency wide receiver potential for the Patriots.
We are Rogue Media Sports.
Hey, thanks for stopping by. And if you like this video, be sure to give us a like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel a ton. You can follow me on Twitter here for some more outrageous Boston sports takes coming to you every weekday at noon Eastern time. And then after that, wherever you get your podcasts.
We are Rogue Media Sports.